Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Politically Black with Zach. And today we are talking to Gabriel Sanchez, who is running for state rep seat District 42. That includes like Marietta and Cobb County. But it's what? It's a part of Marietta. Is it part of Smyrna as well?
It's mostly Smyrna.
Okay, mainly Smyrna, a little bit of Marietta, and there's a little bit of
Cumberland, like where the battery is.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty big seat, like very populous, highly populated. You're running against an incumbent. What motivated you to go for this opportunity?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Cobb County. I'm a son of Colombian immigrants. And, I think I have over 90 relatives in the metro Atlanta area. So we have a big community, family parties are always crazy. And I've always had a strong sense of community, especially because a lot of my family members are very involved in charity work. And so I've always known the importance of giving back to your community. And I've always been interested in politics, but I never saw myself doing this, but like I started doing some political work, working for a human rights campaign, doing LGBT rights in college. And I worked for a couple of candidates as well and state representatives. And I realized I really like doing this work to try to make an impact in people's lives. And I just feel like we're missing voices in the state house. We do not have people who are there to represent regular working people. We need politicians who are going to represent the people and not the people at the top. You know what I'm saying? Like corporations, the wealthy elite. I think we need politicians who are going to come from a working class background to be that voice, because a lot of people are facing, the housing crisis, healthcare. I mean, even for me, this is the first year I've ever been able to renew my lease because they always jack the price up so much every year.
Prices are continuously climbing.
Yeah.
The demand for greater profits across the board are there. People are definitely feeling it, and I'm afraid that field may turn to suffering, in time. If you are elected, what will be priority number one for you?
Housing. Georgia currently has a ban on rent control. So no municipality can implement rent control, and that's just insane to me. I mean, prices have increased so much in the last 4 years alone. And the fact that we don't have that is, I think we could definitely do better. And so that would be my number one priority is repealing that ban on rent control. And then I think we need to create a program for people who are long-term renters to eventually own their homes.
So why does the system currently exist? Why is it that municipalities cannot implement rent controls currently? Like, why would our state allow that?
That's a great question, honestly. They passed this ban on rent control a while ago, and I can only think that they're in the pockets of major corporations and the huge landlords that are trying to make money off of us and squeezing everything out of us. So.
Right, and that's exactly what I'm thinking too. And I think that it's going to be a long, hard road for you to push that. But I think it's important that we have candidates who are put into places that have the power to make that happen.
Exactly.
How would you build a coalition support around that issue?
Yeah, I mean, this is actually one of the big parts of my campaign, and I think that's missing, is that we need people who are in office who aren't just going to legislate, but also organize. Legislating is a huge part, but we also need to use our power and our position to organize our communities and engage them in the process, because especially when it comes to local politics, people are just not aware of what's going on and not involved. And I think if we, obviously on the national level, there's so much work that needs to be done. But if with the local level, sometimes things can be easier than you think because you don't need as many people involved, because it's local stuff, you're directly involved, and people are much more receptive to that in their state house. I've noticed a lot of even Republican legislators, once they start hearing a lot of pushback, they start to get scared. I heard from a former state senator who was at a canvass for us another day. He was talking about how all these legislators, they think they can say whatever they want, and their district back home will never hear about it. And I want to change that, because we need people to know what's going on, because once they hear about it, they'll be pissed off and they'll be ready to come in to take back the people's house.
There are a lot of people, and I think we have a lot of voters who don't vote.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of people that have a lot of potential who are not involved. And so getting them involved, getting them to organize would make a huge difference. How can we do more of that ahead of the election in 2024?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is meeting voters where they're at when it comes to being in the community with them in the churches, in the community events, but also meeting them where they're at with the issues. That's why housing is a huge priority for me, as well as healthcare and the economy, because that's where people are feeling it. Like I said, the housing rents have skyrocketed in the last 4 years, and that's the number one issue we're hearing at the doors right now. And so many people feel like there's not enough people in power talking about it. And so if people feel like you're actually fighting for them and they see that, then they will join your cause. I had a person in my apartment complex who I talked to a few months ago who has never voted for, not even registered to vote. And now he's registered to vote and he's voting for me because he believes in the vision that I have for the community. And that's the kind of organizing we need to do across the board in our communities. It's about coming together to fight for the things that unite us.
One thing that makes your work a little bit different than really anybody that I have seen is that you're leveraging social media well. Like you use TikTok and Instagram to educate people in Georgia about the issues that affect them. Whereas I see most candidates are just doing like really cute pictures of themselves holding up signs. Do you feel as though, how has that benefited you or has it benefited you, your work on social media around educating voters around the issues? How is that working for your current campaign?
Yeah, no, I think it's been really good. That's why I have a comms director on my team. Shout out to Jana. She's amazing. And she's a KSU student, as well as my entire comms team, because we actually have a campaign Discord where we make sure we have a lot of volunteers involved, because again, it's about building a movement and having a bunch of people come together, not just to knock doors, but also to help plan and strategize. And so the TikTok, I started it over a year ago because this is what I was saying earlier, is that I feel like there's just this gap with local politics, that people don't know what's going on. And I feel like TikTok and social media is an amazing way to educate people. A lot of people didn't know what bills are getting passed in the legislature. And when they find out, they're like, what is going on here? I didn't sign up for this. This is not what my taxpayer money should be going to. Why are we putting taxpayer money into private schools? Why are we...
It's done now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
What, $6,900 or $6,500 per student can get pulled out to be sent to, a private school of a parent's choice. So it's happening. We couldn't stop it. Why couldn't we stop it? Why could we not stop it? Like, this is one of my personal issues, is I feel as though unfortunately we live in a society where you have two choices. It's a dichotomy.
Yes.
You're going to either go, it's Republican or it's Democrats. And unfortunately, Democrats haven't done, in my opinion, enough to be on the offense, let alone the defense to defend us from these actions. Why are we constantly losing in the state of Georgia?
Because, like you said, I don't think our leadership has done enough to really engage the voters, to bring them involved. I think that, they've done a lot. And, I know I'm friends with a lot of these people in the representative, and I know they do a lot of good work. But I do think that there's a disconnect between some of the different coalitions in the Democratic Party here in Georgia specifically. And I think that's why we saw such a huge loss in 2022, where compared to other states, they did a lot, Democrats performed a lot better, but Georgia did not, right? And I think that we are currently in a transitional phase, and I think we're building that coalition to bring it back. And what we need to do when we rebuild that coalition, and this is why I'm running, is that we need to make sure regular people are involved in that coalition to put on the pressure. Because when the number one thing that a representative will respond to, no matter what, is I'm your constituent. So what we need to do is we need to engage voters, not just in Atlanta, but all over the state of Georgia, because there's Democrats everywhere, right? In rural Georgia, South Georgia, Savannah, Albany, all over the place, right? But we're not engaging them enough, especially in rural areas. And if they understand the power of their voice and we can empower those voters, I think that can really make a difference. And that's really the biggest gap we have right now. Because it only passed by one vote. That school voucher bill passed by one vote.
One vote. I agree. I think that's a really good, strong explanation. And we discredit our rural Georgia voters too often in this state, when Atlanta has all the people, but it doesn't always have all the power. And it shouldn't, because that's not how, a representative government works in the first place. That's a really good point. And I'm happy to hear that, you're thinking like that, and you're, kind of that you're considering it. Another question that I have is that, one thing that is like a major issue right now is, America's immigration issue and all that's happening with politics and this issue. Where have we gone wrong as a country, and how can we get it right?
Oh, that's a big question. I think as someone,
and I'm asking it because, right, my background, for me, immigration was the defining the defining issue of my lifetime. That's what I've always said. It's like a weird thing, right? It hit my radar when I was in college in 1999, and I'm like, Al Gore, George Bush, it was a stark contrast and a stark difference in how they campaigned. You had one person who was going to create a legal path to citizenship and ensure opportunities for Americans, and one person who was going to restrict. And the one who restricted is the one who had the election given to him by the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And I never lost that issue, and I've just seen us continuously go down. When President Obama became president, I wanted immigration to be the number one issue for this president. I didn't want it to be universal health care because I said universal health care will come later. But right now we need to ensure that people who are in this country are given the citizenship rights of this country.
Yeah.
So then we have a voter base of Democratic Party. So the other issues you want will happen. And it's been fumbled ever since. But I don't have the right to speak for a Colombian migrant to this nation because I'm not Colombian. So I wanted to know what your thoughts were before I...
No, of course.
And also better inform my opinion from a different perspective.
I mean, I just don't think people realize just how much our economy is based off of immigrants, right? We are the foundation of this economy in Georgia, the agricultural industry, the poultry
foundation
factories
of this state's economy are our migrant workers. Absolutely.
Exactly. And so they are biting the hand that feeds them literally, because they're in the poultry farms, they're in the regular agricultural industry. And it's just, I've never understood. Well, no, I do understand why. They want to distract us from the issues that really matter by putting a scapegoat. It's the immigrants. Don't pay attention to the money we're stealing from you.
Don't pay attention to your lack of health care.
Yeah.
Don't pay attention to how we're subverting funds and we're crushing public education. Don't pay attention to any of that, how we're taking away the rights, human and civil rights that should be guaranteed to every person because we have one situation where a violent act occurred.
Yeah.
And that person just so happened to be here as a migrant. And so
despite the fact that immigrants are actually less likely to commit crime than American citizens, which people don't want to talk about that, but also, I mean, I grew up, my parents were undocumented. I didn't know why they had Tennessee driver's licenses when I was young. And it wasn't until later that I realized the law. And it's like, how do we expect people to even drive to go get a job? If they can't even have a driver's license, or how do we expect kids who are graduating from high schools in Georgia who are undocumented, who do not qualify for in-state tuition, how do we expect them to get ahead? They have grown up in this country. I have a coworker of mine in the restaurant who is terrified of the new legislation, HB 1105. He's been here most of his life. He's been here longer than he lived in Mexico. And this is his home. And just because of his immigration status, they're gonna want to deport him. And it's just...
I'm terrified for friends of mine who've been here their entire from birth, but just because of the racial profiling that I know people are prone to in this state, it concerns me.
I mean, it's happened to me. I was up in Cherokee County, and they're like, "Where are you coming from? Where are you going?" And I'm like, "You got drugs in there?" I'm like, "I'm just driving home. I was at my cousin's house." Like, it's.
And these are harsh realities that come to fruition. What can we do? What can we do about it?
I mean, I think that's why we need the representation. Out of 236 legislators, only 7 are Latino, despite the fact that we're 10% of the population, right? And, obviously I know a lot of people support our issues on the Democratic side, but it definitely means different when it comes from someone who's lived that experience. And, I
agree.
Even though personally I haven't been undocumented, I know a lot of people in my family, including my parents, have experienced that and all of the fear that comes with it. And that's what we need when I talk about organizing our communities. When they have someone who can speak their language and can represent them, that gives them the courage to come forward, because a lot of these people are scared to even come forward to advocate because what could happen if they get arrested. And so that's part of that.
Has the Georgia Democratic Party done enough for this community?
That's a great question. And, I think that they're making strides, but I think there's definitely more that could be done. We do have a caucus, but, again, it's that lack of representation that isn't there. I mean, and I know a lot of people were criticizing this. We didn't have a single Latino in the 2022 statewide ticket, right?
Not one. Not one.
That was a big criticism, and I think rightly
we
so.
did in 2020.
Yes.
But, in 2018.
Right.
With Sarah Riggs Amico, but we did not in
2022.
No.
Right. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. This is a huge community of people who have been untapped. And, there's a reason why Latinos don't go out to vote. It's because it's an untapped, community that I mean, we saw in 2018 just the power. I mean, it grew by 700% voting turnout in 2018, and that was just a start. But we have to keep that going because it went back down in 2022. And so we have to maintain that and continue that to get the victories that we want to see.
Well, and it also takes an investment in those communities.
Exactly.
It takes people. It takes, again, like, you're canvassing, you're doing the work. The Democratic Party has to do that same level of work to and grapple with the challenge that this community is not homogeneous in how they think and how they believe, and this just takes a lot of nuance in how you approach, and it's not. I don't think it's happening. I would love to see our Georgia Democratic leaders do more of that work to make it happen.
I mean, I will say, the Georgia Democratic Party does a lot of great work with voting rights, and I wish they would put the work that they do in that with the same and have the same enthusiasm and work ethic on other issues like our immigrant issues, like legalizing marijuana, like the $20 minimum wage, stuff like that.
The Republican Party is absolutely going to making a very strong play for Latino voters on a national level.
Oh, yes.
It is a huge part of our former president Donald Trump's plan for 2024. I haven't seen the same level of planning from Democrats. Former President Trump's campaign cut out the minority outreach team that was focused on getting black voters to shift. Do you think it will be successful?
So if we don't get our act together, then it will be. And, sometimes I do see that sometimes we take people of color for granted in the Democratic Party, and we cannot, these people will shift if you don't do enough for them. And if you don't show that you're at least fighting for them, even if you don't necessarily win, at least show that you're doing everything you can possibly do to fight for these communities. And so I know, for example, voting rights, we do that a lot. And I think that's a great way. And that is a good example of what we can do in other issues. I don't understand why there are Democrats adopting the messaging of the right wing. We've seen some of that where it's like, oh, well, we are, saying the word illegal. We are having an immigration crisis and we need to clamp down. I mean, the bipartisan legislation didn't have anything with pass the citizenship, right? And I don't know why there is a huge coalition in the base that is ready to fight for this issue, and it will be good for the country. And I don't know why if you adopt the framing of the right wing, they're just going to go with the right, the voters are just going to go with the right wing. Instead of, why would they, if you're both hard on immigration, right? Who are they going to really go for? The Republican has always been hard on immigration, or this, and so instead of adopting their framework, we should have our own positive message. And that's what we need.
I agree. I think that, I think that our president, when he misspoke, I think it was because he was going off script. Yes. And I just think that from what I saw, he was responding to Marjorie Taylor Greene's rhetoric with her same rhetoric. She said this, so he just repeated what she said to counter what she said. But no matter how you look at it, it's something that it shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have ever come out of his mouth. And it was a very disappointing moment, for me to see. But at the same time, I think it's significantly more disappointing to see Donald Trump say that our migrants are coming to this country and they're poisoning the blood of America.
Oh, 100%.
And using, Nazi language in the 21st century America. But there's a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of ground to cover. I hope that President Biden is reelected, and that throughout the course of the next 4 years, we finally get a quick, expedient path to citizenship for every American citizen who should be recognized as a legal American citizen.
Right.
So that's my hope. And I think that we have to put that pressure on the administration when the administration gets reelected. But step one is, of course, getting them reelected, as well as getting you elected to the seat that you're running for, so that you can begin to be that representative voice for your community and for all of us in this state, especially around housing, which is something I think everybody agrees is an urgent need.
100%.
An urgent need, especially in Metro Atlanta. Gabriel, thank you so much for coming out, and we're wishing you the best. The last question I have for you is this. For the people that are watching this and they're now wanting to support you and your work, what can we do to support you?
Yes. Well, I'm running because I believe everyone deserves housing, healthcare, and an economy that works for all of us. And if you want to join this movement, because it's not just about me, it's about all of us coming together to build this movement, then you can go to sanchezforgeorgia.com. And if you live in Smyrna, Cumberland, or around the Dobbins Air Force Base area, you can vote for me on May 21st. Early voting starts April 29th. If you don't live in the district, that is totally fine because there's so many other ways to get involved. Volunteering, you can knock on doors, call voters, send postcards, or you can contribute to the campaign. We are the only campaign not taking any corporate money. We're all about small dollar grassroots fundraising. So anything you can do would really help as well.
How is it coming with taking that approach? Like, that's a hard stance to take.
It is.
And so do you feel as though it's handicapping the campaign because you're not taking big donors?
I think that, one of the things for me is that I think money in politics is such a huge issue, and we have so much corruption when it comes to the people lobbying and giving so much money to politicians to do what they want. And so for me, it's such a strong principle that, I can't take that away, right? I'd rather make it harder for myself than to, fall. It's a slippery slope.
You rather go the hard way, but the right way.
Exactly.
I agree.
I think, if even I'm not able to stand hold on that principle, then who will? And if I can show you that we can win even without the corporate money, then we can win all the changes we need to see with the people's voice.
I agree. Gabriel, thank you so much for making time to be with us, and I appreciate you, my friend.
This is great. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.